Who to start, who to sit. Next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers. I'm here with Dave Richard, and we are talking start-sit calls for Week 4 of the NFL season. We'll start with I think, a pretty tough one for Thursday Night Football. It sounds like Christian Watson is going to make his debut from that hamstring injury that's kept him out since the start of the NFL season. But we don't know exactly how much he's going to play. You know, he said that's the plan. When asked if he's going to play, he's officially questionable. At this point, I'm expecting him to play. Dave, start or sit Christian Watson versus
I think he's flex worthy, and it really comes down to just the upside that he has. Remember, This is the type of receiver who's capable of putting up a great fantasy week on one play.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of his deep speed, because of his size, because he figures to eventually be the top target, and because his quarterback has actually started to make some great plays this season, I feel kind of okay with Watson. Certainly not starting him with the same expectations that I had when I drafted him.
Yeah.
But someone who should be able to be considered a top 30 wide receiver. I'd go with the Rams guys ahead of him, for example. I think that's kind of obvious. But you might actually sit and think about it, especially in non-PPR, Mike Evans versus Christian Watson, because Evans has a matchup historically he's been terrible in. And it's a tough matchup for Baker Mayfield throwing it to Evans. So it's going to come down to a close call. I bet people will start Evans over Watson. I get that. But he's in that like 30-ish range for me.
Yeah, that Marshawn Lattimore matchup, it's not just that Evans has struggled to produce. He's gotten ejected from at least one game against the Saints because of the frustration that matchup has caused him. So, yeah, it's a risky one for sure. I like that comp. I think I would go Evans. I feel a little more safe with him, but I'm viewing Watson as, like you said, a high upside guy, especially Jordan Love doesn't just lead the NFL in air yards per pass attempt this season. He's a full yard per pass attempt ahead of the number 2 quarterback. They are being really aggressive. It's come at the expense of efficiency and accuracy for Jordan Love. You know, his completion percentage is pretty low, completion percentage over expectation, pretty low as well, but there's a lot of big play potential there for Christian Watson. Let's move on to another one. We've talked about him a couple times this week already, but Dave, I want to get your thoughts. How are you viewing Alvin Kamara for Week 4 against the Buccaneers?
This one's a lot easier than Christian Watson. We knew that he was in good game shape to begin with. There was recently a video put out about what he had been doing to get ready for the season and how he's trying to change his game and be even more balanced. I think he has a bounce back year, and I don't mind starting him immediately with number 2 running back expectations. And I know it's Tampa Bay and we're worried about Tampa Bay. Did you see what DeAndre Swift did to Tampa Bay? And it's a short week for Tampa Bay. I'm fine starting Alvin Kamara. I might not expect a ton of catches from Kamara with Jameis Winston under center. Those two never seem to really consistently get on the same page when it came to, checking down. But I do think that Kamara will take over this backfield, move Kendre Miller and Tony Jones onto the bench, and, see north of 15 carries, which for a guy with fresh legs and a proven track record, you'd love to start.
I actually do have Kamara as an RB1, but I think that's more that I think there are only like 7 or 8 guys that I feel really confident in as an RB1. So like, I've got him in the Miles Sanders, Zach Moss, Jahmyr Gibbs range where I think the upside will be there. I think the workload will be there, but I'm not necessarily 100% confident in them. But there just aren't a lot of running backs that I am super confident in these days. I want to see if you're confident in Devon Achane. Excuse me.
As we learned
this week. Yeah, I'm getting you. I even put the pronunciation right next to it and I still messed it up. Is there any question that he's a starter-worthy player for Week 4 against Buffalo?
I mean, you can question it if you want to, but we've seen the Dolphins now over the past 2 games when they've taken on defenses that dare them to run. They run, and they do a great job with it. And it's rare when they see multiple running backs get 15 carries or 15 touches, I should say, per game. But I think Mostert leads the way. I think Achane's right behind him. And this Buffalo Bills defense, week 1, smashed by Breece Hall. Week 2, big bounce back spot against Las Vegas. Week 3, The numbers kind of look okay against Washington because the Commanders didn't run the ball that much, but they were a little inefficient there. And so I'm a little nervous that this Bills run defense won't be able to hold up. It's not going to be the bloodbath that the Dolphins had against the Broncos. Forget about that. That's not happening again. But could Achane get 10 to 12 touches and get 70 total yards and have the chance to score, especially if the Bills miss a tackle? Yeah, I think that's possible. So I'll start him as a number 2 running back, like him a little bit more in non-PPR. But you talked about the running backs that you're willing to trust. If you have a hard time finding 12 running backs to trust to put in your top 12 as RB1s, I can't imagine what you're going through with RB2s, because I think Achane is just one of those guys that has the upside, and that's almost all you need to be an RB2 in fantasy right now.
All right, let's move on to one last wide receiver. And I think comparing him to Christian Watson makes a lot of sense. T. Higgins has had a pretty rough start, obviously a huge week 2, but he was bad in week 3, had some really bad drops, did not help Joe Burrow when he needed it in that game. And he's now had 2 pretty bad fantasy games out of 3. I'm ranking him as a wide receiver 3 ahead of Christian Watson. Are you starting T. Higgins with confidence?
I'm definitely starting T. Higgins ahead of Christian Watson, and I'm starting him with relative confidence as a number 2 fantasy wideout. Look, how do you move the football against Tennessee?
Yeah.
If you think Cincinnati's doing it by running it with Joe Mixon, you're going to be mistaken. They're going to test the edges with Mixon, but they're going to end up throwing a decent amount. And Burrow seemed kind of happy that he came out of Monday night's game unscathed. And so if that's the case, and we know that this Titans secondary has had all sorts of problems, I wouldn't be surprised in the least if T. Higgins had another bounce back game. And so now we might be looking at a yo-yo situation for T, where one week he stinks and then the next week he's good. And maybe that goes on for a little bit until Joe Burrow gets back to full strength. But I'm optimistic that Burrow will eventually get there. They need him in this game, both Burrow and Higgins, to come through with a nice win over Tennessee.
All right, that's going to do it for FFT and 5. We'll see you tomorrow.